Hello, 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 Tampa Bay listeners and beyond. You've got everything PEO on Money Talk 1010 AM. I'm Evan Collart.
I'm Lionel Francis.
Buddy, I missed you.
Same here, buddy.
Same
here.
Those off weeks are tough, but I really had to roll up the sleeves last week. Spent 4 days up in the Panhandle, 41 agency meetings.
Awesome.
Spread out over Pensacola and Tallahassee. It was kind of good getting back to the roots. I know you, Mr. Cold Call fan over here.
I tell you, man, it helps.
It was pretty darn close to back to the basics in that sense, but I sure did miss the seat, my friend. So
same here.
Got a good show today. Pat Cleary is going to join us, not in studio, a little different for our guests, but calling in today. He's president of NAPEO, for those that don't know, National Association of Professional Employer Organizations. Has spent 12 years at the helm and really been the leader of an amazing organization, while the PEO business has had literally quadrupled in size over the last 10 years. Going to be kind of nice to get his take. And, I think that's our biggest feedback we hear is go back to the basics, explain PEO 101. Really, what is it, how it works? And we're going to do that over this next hour. It's going to be awesome.
I think we're going to get a better understanding from him because, again, you got to remember he also has a wide range of career span over 25 years, government policies, public affairs, and communications. So his insight into the PEO is probably going to learn something today.
You and I both too, right?
We're both going to, yeah.
A couple of 20-year vets going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
We're learning together.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I do want to say a quick shout out, even though we were off last week before we had Amber Spears on. She was our last, but certainly not least guest, finishing up our, Women of Impact Now series.
She was awesome.
She was. March
awesome.
March in general was awesome.
Was awesome.
All strong women leaders in their industries and entrepreneurials, beasts, if you will. And, really, her mastermind, she's on the speaking circuit. She's doing a lot of great things. And it was really, really fun to have her on the show.
The women that were here, inspirational, and taking the bull by the horns and just starting their own way and not taking anybody's crap, because we always ask that question. Do you have any of these issues, especially in a male-dominant world when it comes to these industries that you're in? And their response, really impressive. Really impressive because they're not falling for any of that, and they're just going to make their path, and whoever's in their way, they're going to knock them down.
Yeah, a lot of them really are coming out of male-dominated industries and broke through a lot of barriers. It was fun. We're thinking of our next month-long concept for the show. And we'll certainly be bringing that to the airwaves real soon. But I say we get into it, right? We always say how fast the hour goes.
Yeah.
Without further ado, Pat Cleary on the show with us. Are you there, Pat?
Hey, guys. How you doing? Good to be with you tonight.
We are doing well. It's a beautiful sunny day in Florida. Little rain started up this afternoon on the way to the studio. But you know what? Nothing better to do on a rainy afternoon than get on the airwaves.
Exactly. I feel like I'm interrupting this bromance a little bit there. I hope that's okay.
No, hey, you're going to be fine. This is awesome. We really appreciate you being on the show with us today.
Hey, and I'm not in Washington, D.C. I'm online, the Taylor Swift show over here at Raymond James. I'm hoping to get in. So.
Yeah, I heard your daughter's going to be attending that. Are you going with her?
She is going. No, I'm just the underwriter.
The facilitator.
Wow.
Well, listen, I know you're a busy man, and we do appreciate you taking some time over this next hour for us, our listeners, and really for the industry as a whole.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the invite. I really do.
No problem. I know you're getting your little taste of the airwaves yourself. I heard you got a podcast going on.
Yeah, we should roll it out hopefully this week. So it would be on the NAPEO.org website at some point, but hopefully this week we'll roll it out and we'll send that email out to our members, let them know it's there. I got about 10 interviews in the can, but it's with industry leaders. It really would be just for us in our industry, but they've been great. Every one of them have been really interesting. They've all got such great stories to tell, and their beginnings in the industry and stuff, and where they are today. And so it's great. It really is terrific. And as long as I don't do the talking, it stays interesting, and it has so far.
Well, I think most would say you've got a face made for radio, my friend. So welcome to the big show.
Thank you for noticing. Yes, you stole my best joke.
Well, I think it's pretty easy how this one starts. You've had a wide-ranging career. I know you've been the president of NAPEO for going on 12-plus years, and the industry has literally quadrupled over the last 10. We crushed it through the pandemic. But let's talk a little bit about your background. I'm looking at your bio, Harvard, Stanford. I mean, you've done a lot. Tell our listeners kind of that path to getting to the presidency of NAPEO, if you will.
Yeah, it was a meandering path, I'll tell you that. And I tell people I've got the typical Washington resume. I can't hold a job. So I am old enough that I actually started in the Reagan administration. So, I met the man several times, and it was a privilege to be part of his administration. I was Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy in the Labor Department, which meant we advised the Labor Secretary, Bill Brock, on all his cabinet meetings and all his policy issues. And then I did that for a while, and then President Bush I appointed me to a thing called the National Mediation Board. And if you see me and I've got white hair, that's why. 5 years as a federal mediator, a labor mediator, would do it. Some of your listeners will remember Eastern Airlines. I was in the middle of that. And then I went to the National Association of Manufacturers as a lobbyist for them on HR issues, and I was there for 10 years and doing a little bit of everything in the place. I was head of our sales division for a while, and public affairs, and our small manufacturers division, and communications and everything else. And then that's it. And then I got a call from a headhunter one day saying, we're doing a search for the president of NAPEO. And when I was at the NAM, we chaired or co-chaired, meaning I chaired or co-chaired every workplace coalition in town. So I had workplace coalitions on OSHA, on FMLA, on H-1B, on all these issues, and we chaired or co-chaired it. And it was all associations around the table, and I had never heard of NAPEO.
Yeah. I also noticed that you also had a blog during that period of time, shopfloor.org.
Yeah,
What's
I had
that?
a blog when I was at the NAM, and I finished 2004 with 12 listeners, all blood relatives, and I finished 2006, readers. I finished 2006 with 1 million readers. So it was fun. It was fun to do. I wrote every day for 2.5 years, and then I hung up the pen. So interesting. So, but it was a good run, and the NAM was a great organization, and I liked being there. But I got the call for NAPEO, and again, never heard of a PEO. Had never heard of NAPEO. That was the strategy then, which was to lay low. And for some crazy reason, thanks to very weak competition, I got the job. As Dizzy Dean would say, I slid in, and I've been there since the end of 2011.
I see you're also an author as well.
Yeah, I wrote a book. I was federal mediator, so I sat at a bargaining table for 5 years every day, and saw people negotiate, and were smart people, capable people, and kind of fell into the same traps. All of them fell into the same traps over and over and over again. So I kept really good notes, and I got invited to Stanford Business School to speak about it, and that became a regular gig. And I just downloaded my notes into hard copy, and I wrote a book called The Negotiation Handbook. It's available in bulk on Amazon. I'm still paying for this Taylor Swift ticket, so if you can help me with that, that'd be good. But yeah, I wrote the Negotiation Handbook, and that was a lot of fun.
Did I hear that right? A headhunter placed you into this, and obviously you found your way, but you had no prior PEO experience before becoming the president of NAPEO?
Yeah, and here's what's crazy is I had spent at that point 25 years on the HR beat. I had never heard of a PEO. I didn't know what it was. And, again, at the Labor and at the NAM, we did all the policy issues, everything that touched on HR. I'd never heard of a PEO. And so I was Googling it when I talked to the headhunter, like, the hell's a PEO? So, so I came to the industry, literate, conversant in every HR issue that you could imagine, but didn't know anything about PEOs. So OJT, I learned on the job.
Wow.
Well, let's break this down, assuming we've got some listeners here in the Tampa Bay area that, obviously if they've been catching the show, we've been bringing them up to speed, but, NAPEO, National Association for Professional Employer Organizations, what's a day in the life, of running this organization like for you? What's that consist of?
Wow, that's such a great question. I guess I would say, it depends on the day, right? No 2 days are the same. But for us, it really is, we're very focused. I mean, as far as our members are concerned, basically 3 areas. Government affairs, promoting the industry, marketing communications, and education, right? And so we do that in equal parts on any given day, or different varieties or quantities on any given day. But that's it. And I think the job of an association CEO is consensus. It really is. And so what I spend my day doing is building consensus among our members on various issues. If they're not together, then we work to bring them together, and then we go and we execute the plan. But most of it really is. It's being in touch with our board members and with our members who are not shy. We hear from them all the time. And executing on our plan, which is to grow the industry and advocate for the industry before state and federal legislatures and regulatory bodies, and educating our members on all the stuff they need to know about the latest developments on PEO.
Wow, 12 years at the helm of the association. What is your observation of the industry right now? Oh man,
it's on fire. It's unbelievable. As you guys said in the intro, this industry's quadrupled in size in the last 10 years. We've increased awareness 40% in the last 4 years. It's hotter than a pistol, right? It's just, we're watching it grow. We all thought the pandemic would kill us because it hit right in the small business space. And it didn't not only not kill us, we grew. It was our second biggest year, bested only by the following year. So if a PEO can get you through a pandemic, like just imagine what's the worst thing that could happen to you, right? It's like another pandemic. Well, then I'd grab onto a PEO if I were you. And so that's really been it. And again, knock wood here, but the growth has been steady and sustained. And as far as I'm concerned, really no end in sight.
Yeah, I'm looking at some stats here, Pat. 173,000 businesses are utilizing a PEO, ensuring nearly 4 million workers, right? There was over 216 billion processed in 2020. Okay, and I know we've only had growth since then. And currently represents about 15% market share of employers from 10 to 99 employees, right?
Correct.
Obviously, the current state of the industry doing so well. What would you, and we got about 2 minutes here before break. What would you say the biggest, factor is for that? We're outsourcing is at this all-time high, if you will.
Yeah, there are a bunch, and we may continue on the other side of the break. There really are a bunch, but to me, the arc of regulation only bends up. Right, and when President Trump was elected, folks were like, "Oh, he's going to do away with regulations." And I said to them then, every regulation he takes off, Mayor so-and-so and Governor so-and-so is going to put 5 more in his place. And they did. So the arc of regulation just continues up. Like states, localities are regulating all over the place, right? That's the first trend. And the second trend is that anybody who's come out of business school in the last 20 years had one commandment hammered into them, which is if it's not your core business, outsource it. That's security, it's IT, it's HR, it's travel, like you name it, outsource it. So we've got really those two tailwinds, as far as I'm concerned, that are going to push this industry into really positive territory, continue to push us into positive territory for years to come. So again, maybe on the other side of the break, there's an interesting dynamic that's happening now post-pandemic that I think has also led to growth and will continue to lead to growth for us and for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. We talk about it on the show an awful lot. Outsourcing is literally at an all-time high, whether it's, like you said, marketing and everything, all the above. We got a lot coming back with Pat Cleary. Stick around, folks. All right. We are back. Beat me to it.
Yeah. Pat, again, we really appreciate you being on the air with us. We were throwing some numbers out there. PEO provided service, 173,000. We were throwing about 487 PEOs, and we threw out, 4 billion worksite employees. And I want to get the listeners to get a better understanding of what we're talking about when we throw these numbers. So the total employment represented by a PEO industry is roughly the same as combining the number of employees for Walmart, Amazon, Kroger's, and Home Depot in the United States only.
Yep.
That's huge.
Yeah. I mean,
Pretty
obviously
impressive.
Walmart and Amazon are the largest employers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Pretty impressive.
Now,
And it's growing. And and if it's okay, I mean, if I can continue from where we were before the break, there's two really important trends in terms of growth. Again, in terms of looking forward, that we've got. There are two big things that are happening right now, which is when I was at the Labor Department, back in the Civil War, there was like one federal minimum wage, and a couple states had their own. Right, that's it. And now I think 35 states have their own minimum wage. And a bunch of localities have their own minimum wage. 20, 30 some have paid leave laws at their state or city level, right? So that's fact one, right? So you kind of hold that in your mind. Like that's as states and localities are legislating like crazy workplace rules, right? Now you go to fact two, which is after the pandemic, small businesses that had employees in one state, Florida, right, for example, one state. Now a small business has employees in 6 states. One went to Georgia, one went to Alabama, 2 went to Carolina. Like your employees now are living in all these states. Okay, so what? Well, all these states are legislating. They're all passing new workplace rules. So if you're a small employer, now you've got employees in 10 states. We used to have them in 1. You better know the rules in those states. And if you don't, you suffer the risk of fines, monster lawsuits, like all these things that can happen to you, can befall you. And so if you're a small employer, like you better get a PEO, right? You better. Because how on earth are you going to know how to comply? And again, back in the day, people could be any place. You didn't care because the laws were all the same. They're not anymore. Right? Everybody's moving into this space, first of all. And second of all, people are scattering to a lot of different states. And so those two trends together are pushing more and more business to PEOs. And it should. Because if I were a small employer or a medium-sized employer, I sure wouldn't want to be rolling the dice on this myself.
Pat, when Evan and we talked about doing this show, one of the main reasons is not everyone is aware, are still aware of what a PEO is. What do we do? Okay, and the services that we could provide. Yep. And the second is the educational part that you get with being with a PEO, because you won't know everything that you need to do, especially when you're starting a new business. When it comes to insurances and how to handle payroll, HR issues, and partnering up. We are still having a difficult time getting agents to buy into this. And I have to say, and Evan and I were talking about it today, we've been doing this show for a while, and I think we've been poking the bear a little bit, because I think some people have listened to this show and realized we are putting it out there that agents, listen, partner up with a PEO. You're doing just this service to your client, not putting another option in front of them so they can make a decision on their own. What suggestion you have? I mean, we've tried everything, trying to get agents and brokers to listen to us and say, hey, you need to partner up with a PEO.
Yep. Yeah, I guess maybe they have a fear of making money or something like that. I don't want to partner. It's all I can think of is like they're afraid it'll put them in a different tax bracket and they'll owe more taxes, right? So there are a lot of brokers with second homes on the beach thanks to PEOs. And there are a lot of brokers making a lot of money out there in America working with PEOs. I think about my friend Andy Lubash of Prestige, which is based up on Long Island, but they're I would say now that I'm certain they're in all 50 states. Andy's very aggressive working through a broker network, and they're crushing it. They're crushing it. And so he actually came down when he was chair on a Saturday to D.C. There was a meeting of brokers, and we went. I'm like, hey, why don't you go in first? Like, I don't want to go first. And so we went in, and it was great. And he made the pitch, and a couple brokers stood up and said, I'm working with PEOs, and I'm making a ton of money doing it. it's just like, why wouldn't you want that arrow in your quiver, right? And the last point I'd make is I just found this out, that ADP Total Source, which is the largest PEO in the country, has a dedicated broker arm. And the business in that, and they just started it. It's only been around like a year or two. And the business in just their broker section would equal the 10th largest PEO in the country.
Not a bad start.
Right? That's a wow. When you think like that's just brokers in ADP Total Source, 10th largest PEO in the country. So, and in fact, our chair, Kristen Appleman from Total Source, is at a meeting with brokers today at Hilton Head. And a lot of eyes are being opened, and as soon as they leave Hilton Head, a lot of money is going to get made. So it's just a matter, if you're a broker and you see a lot of your brethren out there and sisters making money off of this, I'd sure want to know how. And it not only can be done, it is being done every day.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that there's a complete misunderstanding on how lucrative this business is and can be for you, but in that insurance agent mindset, at the end of the day, it's our goal to put our best foot forward for the insured, right? And oftentimes, even when they have a standard market policy covering their business, they're outsourcing anyways, right? We were just talking about that last segment. People are outsourcing literally their employment, marketing, receivables, all of the above. There's even people are even outsourcing their certificates these days to compliance services. And so I don't know where that culture, shift, that barrier is still up of not understanding that it's almost like, Pat, that the business owner understands the legal liability shift better than the everyday insurance agent, right? And, this show, again, we've been doing it just under a year now, and it's kind of our goal is that even if it's just one person comes out of this show a little smarter and brighter on how the PEO space works, Lionel and I have done our job, and this platform is working.
Absolutely. And I would just add to that, right? To your point, like those brokers, you'll probably lose listeners, right? Those brokers aren't doing the job for their clients, right? Like I just think of a metaphor like cars. There's a car broker that only sells Chevys or something. Like, why?
Sure.
Why wouldn't you give your client the full panoply of options, right? And so if you're a broker, why wouldn't you give your client the PEO option? Because it's going to be perfect for some of them, right? And you're going to make money from it. Why wouldn't you do that, right? So it just doesn't make sense to me. And again, God knows there are enough brokers out there that are doing fabulously well because they saw PEOs. I always like to say I see the world in two categories: they're allies and potential allies, right? So these brokers that have found PEOs, like, oh yeah, they're allies, and we figured out how to work with it, and they're making money.
Well, they've actually thought about the long term, because we've had conversations about why wouldn't you partner up with a PEO and let someone else take your client away? You actually think they're going to just stop at the workers' comp? You don't think they're going to go after the general liability, the auto, and everything else that you have with them?
Yep.
I mean,
embrace the change, protect your other lines.
yeah.
It seems like a pretty simple value prop, right?
That's exactly right. And you better hope your client just lives in a cave, because at some point they're going to be out, golfing with their buddies, and their buddies are like, hey, why aren't you using a PEO? Like, what? I don't know. My broker didn't ever tell me about it. Like, why not? You got to change brokers, man, because my PEO's crushing it,
Well, I want to pivot a little bit here, Pat. You're listening to Everything PEO, Money Talk 1010 AM. On the show today, Pat Cleary, president of NAPEO, National Association Professional Employer Organization. Your time on the Hill up in D.C., it's impressive. You've been around there, worked multiple administrations. Amazing to get you to this point. And there's been some, lobbying is a slippery slope. I was part of a landscape and agricultural association, and they had one lady that was up on the Hill barking because the neighbor would always get his grass cut 30 minutes before the city allowable time, and she literally almost made change for that county just by herself. I mean, sometimes it doesn't take the masses. You just have the loudest voice with the right connections. And there has been some disturbing, lobbying against the PEO business the last couple of years, trying to get them to extend coverage to, 1099s, which is just baffling to me. Right? These PEOs are not carriers. If anything, they're more like staffing companies. We don't audit premium. We don't cover 1099s. We don't backfill any of that stuff. So it just seems silly. But, ERC is kind of the newest hot button for us. Everyone's wanting it. Everyone thinks it's a shoe-in to get it. Of course, the PEOs, they have to amend their returns, and they can pass it along to their clients. Almost every PEO we represent here at PEO Advisors has amended once. They're waiting for the government to respond. Has this hit your desk? Has NAPEO put their fingers in this at all in trying to get this moving?
Yeah, and in fact, I got to go back and change my answer to what my typical day looks like, because that's what my typical day looks like is battling the ERTC, so battling the IRS. So that is my typical day these days, guys. I'm telling you, easily for the last year. So this is 100% the number one issue for our members, for the PEO members, 100%. And so, yes, it's exactly as you describe. What is sort of the good news, bad news is that the voice of small business in America right now is us, because the other associations in D.C., the other interest groups have abandoned the fight. We're still in it. As you mentioned, there are 175,000 PEO clients in the country. The backlog is now hit 1 million. So that tells you I'm not good at math, but you can do that. It's 700 or 800 and some thousand small businesses that aren't PEO clients that haven't gotten their ERTC money, and we're fighting for all of them. So we have done everything. Just 1,000 letters to the IRS, meetings with the IRS, meetings on the Hill. Our Capital Summit will be the week of May 21st here in D.C. We will turn everybody loose on the Hill with one message: you've got to get rid of this ERTC backlog. And then on our website, for those members that are listening with NAPEO.org, you will find the ability to click on there and send a letter to your member of Congress. We've put, 1,000 letters just in the last month into Capitol Hill. 10 members of the Ways and Means Committee, the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the tax writing committee, 10 members have written a letter to the new head of the IRS, calling him on the carpet to come down and account for himself for where these stand. So clearly our letters have had an effect. We are dropping letters on Capitol Hill to every office about every other week. I'm sure it's annoying people, and I don't care, because the IRS has got to do its job. They're not. And again, the backlog's going north, not south, dramatically north, from 100,000 to 1 million. It's inexcusable. And we get letters. We sent a letter to our members that they could use to say, hey, this isn't a PEO problem, it's a small business problem. So we started getting mail from clients like, hey, you need to get my PEO to pay my ERTC. And I've written back to all of them to say, this isn't your PEO. This is the IRS. You have to call your congressmen and your senators. And they've written back to a person and said, thank you. I'm on it. Here are the letters we're sending. It's like, your PEO wants to give you your money. They're not getting it back from the IRS. So it is 100% issue number one. It's outrageous. It's unforgivable. It's everything you can think of. This program that was intended to help and save small business, and the money isn't there. And the last thing I would say is, again, it's on our website. The letters, guys, the letters that have been to the Hill, we get copied on. I mean, you need to have your box of Kleenex next to you. These are the saddest, most heartrending stories from small businesses all over America saying, here's what happened to me because I don't have my ERTC money. I got a second mortgage on my house. I had to lay off a bunch of my employees. I had to sell off equipment, blah, 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 because I didn't get my ERTC money. And so now we're publicizing those. We're sending those stories to the Hill as a loop, and we're continuing to pound away with our members, and they're sending it to their clients to say, hey, point the cannon where it belongs, which is at the IRS. Sure. They need to get off their duffs and do their jobs.
You know what? It's not fair for the clients, especially the small business, doing things the right way. Would it be fair for me to say one of the reasons why it's taking so long, because there has been a lot of fraudulent claims coming in? Is that one of the reasons why they're investigating and looking at everything really closely?
Lionel, it's such a great question, and the short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
But all we know, because the fraud affects everything that happens at the IRS, right? So it shouldn't just be this, and they ought to have enough people they could put on the ERTC to get these things cleared out.
Yep.
So I don't think it's that. I just think it's ineptness, on their part. By the way, the IRS last week put out a 150-page report of their plans for the next, literally 10 years. Not a mention of the ERTC in that 150-page plan.
Not surprising.
So we're going back to Capitol Hill today. We're sending a letter to Secretary Yellen, Secretary of the Treasury tomorrow. We will blast that letter out to 535 offices in the House and Senate and say this 150-page report did not even mention the issue you asked the IRS about. So we're going to keep the heat on until that backlog number is zero.
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of broken hearts out there. I really do. I mean, we all remember when we were in the PPP sector and there was that last batch of folks that applied and then the banks started coming back that the coffer was dried up. There's nothing in the accounts. And there's just, it's an awful lot of money. I mean, even if you have just 4 employees that qualified for all 8 quarters, $104,000, that's a big stipend. Think about some of these larger businesses. And there's just so many commercials and ads and attorneys and services now. And all they do, they're telling these businesses it's a 100-day process and you're guaranteed to get it. Not understanding that you had to show a loss. You had, there's multiple qualifying factors. And there's just such a mad misrepresentation of it that it's created an expectation that it's as simple as filing a 3-page app and you got $100,000 coming in, and it's just wrong, and it's unfortunate.
Exactly right.
But
and by the way, they got everybody advertising on the radio that hey, just come to us and we'll get you your money. And the IRS is broadcasting like, stay away from those folks. You know what I mean? Stay away from them because that's not good. If you get audited 5 years from today, you better hope they're still around, and they're probably not going to be, right? So I mean again, the clients are getting pounded by them and thinking like, geez, I ought to get in bed here with the devil. And it's like, don't do it. But by the way, I should just to finish on
15 seconds here, Pat.
Okay.
15 seconds. Go ahead. 10 seconds to break.
Okay, I'll pick this up on the other side.
No problem. Yeah, I just saw it the other day myself where literally a service was saying they would front the money. We've got a lot coming back with Pat. 5 biggest PEO myths. Stick around. All right. We are back. You're listening to Everything PEO on Money Talk 1010 AM. We've got Pat Cleary on with us. One final segment. It's always a quick hour, Pat, as I mentioned. President of NAPEO, been at the helm 12 years, seen the industry quadruple itself over the last 10. You've got this thing chugging along great. I know you wanted to finish up something on the ERC before we got into these last couple things.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just to give you some idea of the numbers, you guys were referring to that. So we did just a quick flash survey of 28 PEOs, so it's about 10% of our membership. We just said, hey, what's this ERTC mean for you? 28 PEOs have 13,000 clients waiting for $3 billion. That's 10% of our membership, 13,000 clients waiting for $3 billion.
Wow.
That gives you some idea of the girth of this issue.
Yeah. I mean, how much could they have really allocated, right? How much has already been paid out? How much can be left? It seems like, there's going to be a lot of unhappy folks out there. It really, really does.
Well, I'll tell you, though, if the well runs dry, they're going to come, burn the place down. I mean, there will be a riot if they run out of money. They can't. They're going to have to replenish it. The money's supposed to be there, and it's been allotted. And that's the thing, they're not paying it. They haven't claimed to run out of money yet. They just can't even process it yet.
Well, they filled up a lot of coffers along the way in some of those COVID bills that really were not relative to COVID. I think that's a whole nother show in itself. I don't want to go down the political path, but just millions and millions of dollars that went to places that really didn't help relief efforts. And it's just sad to see that, the one thing that could do a massive impact is getting jammed up.
Yep.
Well, Pat, we had, I don't know if you know Blanca Aboud. She's the PEO lady. She's out of Texas. She flew in a few weeks ago and was on the show in studio. And we did this neat little segment with her. And I would just love to hear your take on some of these. We called it the 5 biggest PEO myths. And, where Lionel and I are more distress comp specialists, hard to place comp, she's earning a lot of her business in the Texas market. Through benefits and HR-driven needs, right? And it is kind of mind-blowing when you look at, we talked about, 173,000 businesses, nearly 4 million worksite employees. Half of those, are consist of California, Texas, and Florida. Nearly half of those are just in those 3 states. We've got to find a way to get the word out. But I would love to go through this 5 biggest myths for you.
Sure.
We had number 1 is basically when I'm with a PEO, I'm going to lose control of my business. How would you combat that?
Yeah, it's funny. And again, we do focus groups. We've been doing focus groups probably for most of the last 10 years with small businesses. And it's such an education. And so that's the thing. And you're exactly right. When we hear small business, like, you want to use a PEO? Yeah, this sounds great, but I don't want to lose control over my employees. To us, it's an easy one because it just isn't true, right? It's easy. There are other ones that we may or may not get to, but that one's easy because no, you don't lose control of your employees. Oh, really? And I really like my employees. I don't want to lose them. You don't. You keep your employees. Like, oh, that's great. So to me, that's just an education thing. The answer is the answer, which is it's just not true. And when you're in there in the sales process and somebody says it, they can talk to any other client or any other PEO client, and they'll tell them, like, no, you don't lose control of your employees. You don't lose your employees. Yeah,
it's called co-employment for a reason, right?
Sure is.
Right.
Number 2, I have to let go of my HR manager and payroll person.
Yeah, so a couple things is, first of all, you can keep your HR manager, or you can keep one or both, and then we will do the, what am I trying to say, sort of the technical stuff. We'll do the paperwork stuff and free them to do more strategic work in terms of where you're headed and developing your workforce and recruiting and all the rest of that stuff that you do, first of all. Second of all, in most small businesses, there's something else for them to do.
Yeah.
And so that happens every day of the week, especially in this job market where you can't find workers. Unless you're designing, nuclear codes or something like that, you can repurpose one or both of those employees and keep them around, and find a different role for them. But in a lot of cases, they don't need a different role because they just look at more strategic stuff, and you let the PEO handle the ministerial functions.
Yeah, we bring it up all the time, saying, listen, we co-employee relationship. We handle the things that you need taken care of. You still need your HR manager there and your payroll person. We need the payroll person to give us the information we need to run a payroll. Sure. We're not providing a service where we're providing an employee on your site. You still need that employee to conduct their business, to help you out and do other things you need in the office. We're just going to make it easier. We're going to take a lot of out of their plate so they could do other things that you might need them to do.
Yeah, accounts receivable, marketing, right?
We've got a great relationship with SHRM, the Society of HR Managers. 80% of our members are members of SHRM. 80% of NAPEO's members are members of SHRM. We've got a great relationship with them. We exhibit at the SHRM conference every year with the logo. The PEO is an HR manager's best friend. And we get a lot of traction, we get a lot of interest, and we get business from that show every year.
Yeah.
So this is a big one because I think when folks are looking at co-employment or, an employment of record shift model for the first time, and especially, they think automatically pool, right? And I hate that word pool, right? Everyone's kind of living within their own little portfolio in this master portfolio, if you will. But oftentimes they think they'll lose their status as a small business. You got an easy way for that one?
Same thing. It's the same answer as to the first one. You won't. And it's just factual. It'll be a factual error to believe that. So, the Family Medical Leave Act, the Federal Family Medical Leave Act, is at the client level, right? We work. That's a lot of what NAPEO does is we go from state to state to state as they pass these various laws and mandates to make sure, hey, when you got a 20 employee threshold, That's at the client level, not at the PEO level, right? They're like, oh, yeah, right. They clarify it. And so, of course, you have to educate them on who we are first, but they do that. We're going through that in Oregon right now. Oregon passed a bill sort of like at the PEO level, and we're in the process of just getting some legislation out there because there's no animus. There's nobody against us. They just didn't know about PEOs when they passed the bill, and so we clarify it. But, in every case, whatever it is the client's worried about, you can just show them, guarantee them, like, nope, here's the language from the state statute or from the State Department of Labor or insurance, whoever it is, the regulator, that says this will be viewed on the client level. I can give it to you in black and white, so you don't have to worry you're not going to get sucked into this because you're part of a PEO.
This one I've heard several times before. Employee won't like or embrace the change.
So, yeah, it's great. It's that, first of all, most employees have no idea. Now, it's funny, and it depends on the employee group, but it took me a while. As I said, I've spent 40 years on the HR beat, and at some point in last 20 years, I was talking about paychecks and all this stuff, and not the company, but getting a paycheck. And somebody like tapped me on the shoulder and said, like, hey, dude, like people do direct deposit, like this huge and growing percentage of the population does direct deposit. Mm-hmm. So when you have paper checks, you see that your check doesn't say Joe's, car wash anymore. It says XYZ PEO, and that might throw them a little bit. So if you don't get a hard copy check, they have no clue. They don't have a clue. And usually the only way they have a clue is if they need the resources, and they are there for them like Johnny on the spot. They're like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Right? That's your PEO. And by the way, our research has shown that small businesses that use a PEO, the employees are more content. They trust the employer more. They're more engaged. Like across the board, employees are much better off. And we've got empirical data, empirical studies on our website that will show exactly that.
And the reason why is because we're taking a lot of the issues out of their hands, having to worry about doing payroll, filing taxes, worried about W-2s. We also have risk management when it comes to that point and helping them out handling certain claim issues and walking them through that path. I've actually sat in a meeting and had the employees there. The owner had me there with the employees and say, Lionel, I need you to help me understand what we're doing. So I explain what I'm doing for your employer right now is providing him a service where it's pay-as-you-go workers' comp so he can save some money, okay? But we're also going to make sure you get paid on time.
Yep.
Your W-2s, no issues. Direct deposits, no issues. Deductions, no issues, which means he could concentrate on business alone, keeping you busy, keeping you working. What you should be not worried about, but what you should be asking him in a month or so, or maybe a year, can I get a raise?
Back to the money part.
Back to the money part, because that's our job. We're there to help them out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very few are signing up at an increase. But when this thing does do its job correctly, it looks no different than they're outsourcing to another third party, right? And when you've moved from one ASO to a PEO, they'll never know the difference. And keep it simple, right? Lastly, and I know we still have a couple of things here. We got about 6-7 minutes left, but number 5, I will lose the power to decide who gets hired and fired when joining a PEO.
Yeah, it's just like the first myth, right? And again, there's some myths that are a little harder to describe, or they're well founded, like pre-existing relationships, and you got to deal with that one. But this is another one. Like, no, you hire your employees and you fire them, and you work with your PEO on firing them to make sure that you're doing it right, and you work with the PEO to hire them to make sure you're doing it right.
Yep.
But it's you don't lose control over your employees or any aspect of that. You just get another layer of assurance, right, and of help and of protection. And you've got a partner there with you to make sure that you don't screw up and expose yourself to enormous liability, again, through fines, lawsuits, or whatever.
Sure. It's almost like you're not losing control. We're helping you keep the control, keep you compliant, right? It's
that's
the
well
spectrum's
put, right?
a 180.
Yeah.
It really is. And we were talking about this the first segment, right? Post-pandemic, hiring home-based employees. We just put on an account at PEO Advisors that it was literally 16 employees over 9 states, and the PEO literally helped them build in letters of intent, for hiring for each state, and with little caveats and and idiosyncrasies, right? And so, it's when you kind of put your arms around it, we help you keep the control and keep you in good standing.
Right. And just think, Evan, like if you didn't have a PEO, what on earth would they do? How could they figure that out? They wouldn't. They wouldn't be able to figure it out.
They would be turning the clock on at $2.50 an hour somewhere, and it would get steep quick, right?
Yep.
If they're doing it the right way, right?
Exactly.
And there's the big if in there.
Yep.
So we got a couple of things left. I know we just kind of mentioned how literally, nearly 4 million worksite employees over the 487 PEOs, but nearly half of those are comprised of just 3 states, California, Texas, and Florida. I know NAPEO is a nationwide. You're working with PEOs all over the country. How are you, helping combat that and get the word out in some of these other states? We got about 5 minutes here left, Pat.
Yeah, and you would say, too, that, first of all, an enormous percentage of the U.S. population is in those 3 states, right? So it's only logical that that's where our footprint would be, right? But I would say just, anecdotally speaking, we got a huge footprint in New York and New Jersey. New Jersey is my home state. I got to put in a plug.
There you go.
The Carolinas, the Midwest. So we've got a footprint throughout. There's some places where we're thinner than others, but to me, it's like I have said from the moment I got to NAPEO: growth fixes everything. Growth, and if you grow, then we've got more political clout on the state level, on the federal level, et cetera. And the other thing that growth fixes is growth. Right? Because the more you grow, the more people know about you, the higher your profile, the more people are like, hey, what's that about? Right? And I always said, I wish it hadn't taken a pandemic to do it, but a whole lot more people know about a PEO after the pandemic, right? So in these states, in Florida, it's sort of a double-edged sword. In Florida, lots of people know what a PEO is, but your margins are going to be thinner down there, right? Texas and California, not so much. But for us, it is equipping our members wherever they are with all the tools, and we've got it. We always talk about air support. We've got ads. When I got here, our marketing budget was $50,000. This year will be north of $1.4 million. We've got online ads targeted to small business, right? That's our wheelhouse. I don't need to target Microsoft and Amazon. We target, the companies. We target small business, and we bombard them with ads over and over and over and over. That's why our awareness has ticked up, and that's why the industry's growing.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we got time for one more question, Pat.
Well, Pat, I got one. And Pat, we've seen reports of some pretty crazy growth numbers amongst the PEO community.
Yeah.
The vision of how PEO brokers community could help to better educate the prospective client. What's your feelings on that one?
Good one. How can we get the broker community working with these prospects better?
Yeah, actually, we did. A lot of brokers belong to an association called NAHU. A good friend of mine is the head of it, and she does a fantastic job. And we did a webinar last year for NAHU, the National Association of Health Underwriters, to talk about how brokers can work with PEOs. There was great turnout on that. And so anybody who's a member of NAHU can go back and grab that off the website. But I think it really is as simple as finding your local PEO. We have on our website, napeo.org/find a PEO, all one word, FIND, a PEO. Just go into that, enter your state, find the PEOs that do business in your state, reach out and ping them and say, hey, I want to come visit with you and see how we can make some money together, right? And I can't imagine that anybody would say no. If they do, so be it. Just go on to the next one. But you're going to find PEOs in your area who are willing to partner with you. Give it a try. Put your toe in the water and hire somebody to count your money for you.
Real quickly, we saw an article not too long ago that Nebraska was trying to go down the path. They had some legislation where workers' comp and mental illness was finding. Has that thing taken traction at all? We've got 30 seconds.
I don't know. That's a great question. We got 50 states to watch. The only reason I would say no is because I haven't heard more about it. So, but I will. I'll check on it. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. But there are lots of crazy ideas out there, and we have to jump on a plane and go squelch them and everybody the good stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'll send you that article, man. We really, Pat, thank you so much for jumping on today.
Thank you, Pat. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for the good work.
Yep. Next week, we got Steve Ott with Payroll Funding in studio, not to be confused with factoring, can help PEO clients only. You know how this goes. Love God, appreciate your PEO, be kind to your staff, and know we're on a 167-hour break.
You've been listening to Everything PEO, where as another lesson comes to a close, another business gets smarter. Tune in next Wednesday at 6 p.m. so they can add your company to their satisfied group of savvy business graduates. Everything PEO.